Hello students! Today we're going to look at adding and subtracting rational numbers. Specifically, we are going to look at what happens when you mix positives and negatives to add or subtract together. Now, when you were in middle school, you probably learned rules like, I think one of them was leave change opposite for what to do if you're taking a negative plus a positive or a negative minus a negative, things like that. The problem with rules is that if you remember the rule incorrectly, you're going to get the wrong answer and you're not even going to realize you got the wrong answer. So I propose to you that the better way to do this is to try to understand what's going on. So I'm going to have you look at positive numbers and pretend that this is money you have, and negative numbers as debt. Now, that's not the only way to look at positives and negatives. You could also look at it as like feet above sea level and feet below sea level, or positive temperatures, negative temperatures, things like that. But I find that money is the most intuitive for people because people already understand how positives and negatives work with each other when you're talking about money. So, for example, let's say I'm taking -5 plus 3. If you were trying to remember the rules for how to work with positive and negative numbers, you probably will find yourself a little stuck here. Like, is this 2? Is this -2? Are you supposed to add them? Like, is this 8? Is this -8? You might not know if you don't remember the rule. So instead, I want you to think of this as a $5 debt and $3 that you have in your pocket. And then you can think to yourself, well, if I owe somebody $5, but I have $3 in my pocket, am I still in the hole, or have I finally paid off my debt and now I'm in the black again? So thinking of it that way, it's pretty obvious you're still in the hole because you don't have quite enough to pay off this person. You're still going to owe them money. But by how much? How much in the hole are you? Well, if you owe $5 and you have 3 of it to pay off, you still owe $2. So -5 plus 3 is -2. Or let's look at it this way. What if we have 2 minus -4? Now this is one rule that you could, if you want to go ahead and memorize, because it's just one rule. If you see a double negative, it's really the same as a plus. You can think of it as canceling debt. So I had a $4 debt that's canceled. So 2 minus -4, it's like if you had $2 and you knew you were going to have to pay off this $4 debt, and then your friend was like, hey, don't worry about it, man. Don't worry about paying me. You keep that money. You keep it for yourself. So you're like, oh, sweet. I have $2. I don't have to pay that $4 to my friend. Oh, I got $4 more. So that comes out to 6. Let me have you try 2 problems using that kind of idea, and then we'll look at some examples with decimals and fractions as well. All right, check your answers. This is how you might think about this. Now notice the double sign here, it's a plus minus. You could also see this problem written this way without that plus sign in there, and it's the same thing. You still have a $6 debt and a $7 debt. So that doesn't change. It's still negatives. So if you had a $6 debt with one friend and a $7 debt with the other friend, your debt is $13. Whereas with this one, it's kind of like you're canceling that debt again. So if you want, you could go ahead and make that a plus. Then you have 2 plus 3, which is 5. Okay, let's try some with some decimals first. Now, one of the things you may or may not remember is if you have decimal places that don't necessarily match up, like this number has 3 behind the decimal point, this only has 2, you have to remember to line up the decimal points. So it really doesn't matter in this case which number you put on top, so I'm just going to leave it in order. So 5.125 plus, and now this decimal point has to be under the first one. And the reason is because if you think of this again as money, these are I'll get a different color. This is a penny. This is a penny. Ignore the 5 for a minute. That's half a penny. This is a dime. This is a dime. If I were to set it up like this, then I'd be adding 1 penny to a half of a penny, and I'd say 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 what? 6 what? This is half a penny and this is 1 penny. I don't have 6 of... What does that even mean? And it gets even worse here because now we're talking about actual currency. I have a dime here and 2 pennies here. So I'm adding 2 pennies to no dimes. So I have 2. Well, I guess that's 2 pennies. Except then does the decimal point go here or does it go here? And then I'm going to be adding $6 with 1 dime. So do I put a 7 there? That doesn't make any sense. So you have to make sure that you line up the decimal points. Otherwise you're going to get yourself into a lot of nonsense. Alright, then you just start at the right. And if you have a blank space like you do here, feel free to put a 0 there if you want. 5 plus 0 is 5. 2 plus 1 is 3. 1 plus 0 is 1. There's your decimal point. No ambiguity. That's where it goes. 5 plus 6 is 1. And now you can't put, of course it's an 11, but you can't put 11 there. So you're going to bring this, so think of this as $5 and $6, right? That's $11. The 1 goes here. The $10 bill comes over here with this other $10 bill. And now you have $20 there. So you come up with 21.135 as your answer. Now, if you've got, let's try one that we have to subtract. Okay, so let's say we've got negative 1.25 plus 5.5. So go back to our debt and money in your pocket analogy. This is debt. This is money in your pocket. And then think to yourself, if you had $5.50, go ahead and put a 0 there. If you had $5.50 in your pocket and you owed somebody $1.25, think about how you would go about figuring out how much you would have left. Because most of you can do that. Money is something that you're used to working with, so you kind of have a process already of how to figure that out. Take a minute and try to figure it out. Now, what were you doing? You were probably subtracting, I would think. So when you see a problem like this and you know, oh, I have debt and I have some money, so I gotta figure out what would I have left? What's the difference there? You're gonna subtract. And you're always gonna start with whichever quantity, absolute value quantity is bigger. So $5.50 is more than $1.25. So start with the $5.50 on top. And I added a 0 at the end there because I do want to line up those decimal points. Go ahead and subtract those. When you subtract without a calculator, you're again going to start at the right. And you may remember borrowing from elementary school. If you can't take this number minus this number and get a positive answer, then you're going to just borrow. So think of this as you don't have any pennies or nickels or anything like that. You're going to have to break up a dime. So take one of your dimes. You'll have 4 dimes left. This dime here got broken up into 10 pennies. That's really what's going on. So now you have 10 pennies. You can take away 5 of them. You have 5 left. Then 4 dimes minus 2 dimes is 2, and 5 minus 1 is 4. So you'll have $4.25 left over. Let's try another one. So I've got, let's say I've got 1037 minus 2719. So again, do your debt and money in your pocket analogy. I have in my pocket $10.37, but unfortunately I'm trying to pay for something that costs $27.19, so that's a debt. Now, clearly, I don't have enough money. That does mean my answer is going to be negative. But by how much am I short? Again, if you think about that, you probably intuitively know how to do it. You may not realize what you're doing, but in your head, you're probably figuring out the difference between those two. You're subtracting. So we are going to be subtracting these two values. However, when you're using this method of subtraction, you can't put the smaller number on top. It's not going to work. You have to still put the larger absolute value on top. So if you ignore this negative sign for a minute, $27 is more than $10. So this is the number that's going to go on top. And you're just going to ignore You're going to ignore the negative sign for now. Because you're really just trying to figure out what's the distance between these two? How much more do I need? What's the difference between those two prices? And you're actually going to subtract it this way. You just remember that your answer is actually going to be negative. So 9 minus 7 is 2. 1 minus 3 is going to be a negative number. So I'm going to have to break up one of my dollars. That dollar turns into 10 dimes, which comes out to, I had a dime already, now I have 11 dimes. 11 dimes minus 3 is 8. Decimal point. 6 minus 0 is 6. And 2 minus 1 is 1. So I still need $16.82. So my answer is negative 16.82. One thing I encourage you to do is to always estimate your answer. Then you'll be able to tell if you are in the right ballpark or not. So let's say I want an estimate of what's above. You can round it really any way you want. This isn't like when you learn to round in 5th grade or whenever you learn that you had to round it to exactly the right decimal place or your teacher was going to count it wrong. This is just for you. This is a way to help you know if you're doing the problem right or not. So if you think, let's just round that to $10. Pick something that's easy. $10. And just round that to 27. Again, I'm not worried about what place value to round to. I just want to round it to something easy. If I think of this difference, $10 to 27, it's so much easier to just do in your head that, oh, that's a $17 debt. I still need $17. Then you can look at those two, see how close they are. They're both a negative. This is pretty darn close to negative 17. Then you know you probably did it right. Same thing could even work up here, although this depends how you round it, but I could do my estimate. Let's say this is negative 1. You could make that a 5 or a 6 as long as I take that into account when you evaluate your answer, okay? Because if I make this negative 1 plus 6, well, that's pretty obviously $5. If I only owe 1 and I have 6. It's kind of far away, but we did overestimate that 550 quite a bit, so that's probably okay. You at least know that you didn't get something wacky like a negative 7, for instance. Like if you had tried to use the rule and gone the wrong direction, something like that. So close enough for what we need. I'm going to give you a few to try as well, and then we'll look at some fraction answers. Why don't you try those 3 problems? Remember to find an estimate. In fact, I want you to definitely find your estimate first. Then go ahead and give the problems a try. Okay, so let's kind of go over what you might have done. If you did an estimate, now I know 19 is a nice kind of round number. I'm actually going to estimate it a little bit more. I'm going to call it negative 20, because it's an easier number to work with. And remember, this is canceling a debt. It's the same as turning it to a plus. I'll make it 14. So if I think $20 of debt, I have $14, that's pretty easy to do in your head that you owe $6. So when you find an answer, if you did it correctly, you should be somewhat at least close to negative 6, not, say, negative 34, if you would remember the rule wrong. So here's how you might have done it. So when you get to the subtraction portion, since 19 is a larger absolute value than 13, we're going to put that one on top. And I can't take 2 pennies away from 0 pennies, so I'm going to have to borrow all the way from the dollars. Take one of my dollars, replace them with 10 dimes, then take one of the dimes and replace it with 10 pennies. So 10 minus 2 is 8, 9 minus 6 is 3, 8 minus 3 is 5, and 1 minus 1 is 0. And then remember that the answer does need to be negative because I had more debt than cash in my pocket. So my answer is negative 5.38. And that is pretty close to negative 6. For this one, I'm just going to estimate this as 67 and this one as negative 100. Because again, those are easier numbers to work with. In fact, I might go a little nuts here and make this one a 70, because that's really easy to do in your head, negative 30. So I know my answer should at least be in the neighborhood of negative 30, not positive 30 or 170 or something like that. So right here what I'm doing, since I can't take $1 minus $7, I'm taking my actually $100 bill there and getting 10 tens, then I'm breaking up one of the tens, so I have 11 ones, and then I can subtract 7, and then I'm going to have 9 $10 bills left over. So 11 minus 7 is 4, 9 minus 6 is 3, so that gives me $34.29. But now look at your estimate. Remember, it should be around negative 30. So if this is negative 34.29, then that seems pretty reasonable. So those are pretty close together. I did round this one quite a bit, which can account for some of that difference there, and this one as well. So I know that my answer is fairly reasonable. I didn't get something like 170, and I remember the negative sign, so we're good to go there. And then finally this one, I have 2 debts this time, and I'm going to again do my estimate in a way that makes it easy for me to tell around where the answer should be. So I'm going to make this negative 40, and I'm going to make this negative 90, which tells me that my debt is about $130. So I'm going to look for an answer around 130, and I do know it's going to be a little bit off, of course, because that's not rounded too much. Actually, neither of those are rounded too much compared to those. So here we go. Since these are both debts, you probably were able to at least get the process right in your head. You know you had to combine those numbers because they were both debts, so you just add them together. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take 3916 plus 8990, and I know I just need to get a negative answer. So my answer there is negative 129.06, and check your estimate. Make sure it's close, make sure you have the right sign, make sure you didn't go the opposite direction, like make sure you didn't go for 50, which you would have gotten if you would, or approximately 50, which you would have gotten if you had subtracted the numbers instead of adding them. And I think what I'm going to do, this video is super long, even after I edit it probably, so I'm going to do fractions in a separate video. So this will be it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if you have any more questions.